Smogon competitive singles, there's a special group of Pokémon that once had OU status but eventually fell off. These are called OU by Technicality. If you've played any of the older generations, you've probably run into this before. But what does that actually mean, and why are certain Pokémon considered OU by Technicality? Let's break it down. OU by Technicality refers to Pokémon that were used enough to be OU back when their generation was the current metagame. But years later, they aren't really considered OU anymore. Since tier shifts and usage stats get frozen once a new generation starts, these Pokémon don't drop to the UE tier or anything like that. Instead, they end up in this special category we call OU by Technicality. It is also to guide new players and not trick them into thinking these Pokémon are OU, even though they aren't. However, when you look at each individual Pokémon, it's not as straightforward as they aren't good anymore. There are a lot of Pokémon that fall into this category, so let's look at some interesting examples. The first exceptions are Mega Pokémon in Gen 6 and Gen 7 OU as well. In Gen 6 OU, Mega Garchomp, Heracross, Latias, Latios, Slowbro and Tyranitar are all considered OU by Technicality, and in Gen 7 OU, only Mega Garchomp from this group falls into that category. And there's a simple reason for this. In these cases, the base forms of these Pokémon are generally stronger or more versatile, so players usually prefer to save their Mega slot for another Pokémon. But since their base forms are ranked OU, the Mega evolutions can't be ranked lower without also lowering the base form, which isn't how Smogon tiers work. Essentially, you could just use the base form in U and skip the Mega evolution entirely. The only exception here is Heracross. At the time it was considered a great Pokémon, but over the years it has fallen off due to shifts in the metagame. So why are the base forms usually preferred over their Mega forms? Well, the reasons are pretty straightforward. Mega Garchomp is slower than regular Garchomp, which makes it much easier to revenge kill with previously slower Pokémon. Mega Latios sees a big boost in special attack, most notably when Mega evolved, but its base form can still hit harder with items like Choice Specs. Plus Mega Latios can't use Choice Scarf to boost its speed, which limits some sets. Mega Latias is interesting because it's actually on par with regular Latias in viability. The problem is, it didn't have the usage to reach OU at the time, and only after the generation ended did players realize how strong it actually is. Technically, it probably should not even be on this list. Mega Tyranitar is even more intriguing because it's actually ranked higher than its base form in viability and considered the number 3 Mega in the tier. Sand support is just amazing as always. Dragon Dance sets are extremely threatening with the extra bulk and power, and support sets can set up Stealth Rock consistently while being tough to wear down. Mega Slowbro is strong but not as good as its base form. While it does get a huge boost in defense and special attack, it loses Regenerator, one of its defining traits. Regenerator allows Slowbro to heal simply by switching out, which is huge for longevity. Players often delay Mega evolving Slowbro until later in the game to still benefit from Regenerator before going for the sweep, timing it carefully to maximize impact. Speaking of Gen 6 OU, Dugtrio and Raikou are also Pokémon that fall into OU by Technicality. Back when Gen 6 OU was the current meta, the ability Arena Trap was still legal, so Dugtrio saw usage as a trapper, but once the ability was banned, Dugtrio also fell off. Raikou on the other hand was used early on as an Assault Vest pivot to check Pokémon like Thundurus and Gengar, while also having a great matchup against Talonflame and Mega Pinsir. It could also be used as a Calm Mind Sweeper, but it's kind of a meme in the OU tier nowadays, and you cannot really get a lot of value out of it, especially with Pokémon like Excadrill and Serperior being two of the top Pokémon in the tier. Looking at Gen 5 OU, there are a lot of Pokémon that fall into this category. Donphan was a big part of early Sun teams as the dedicated Rabbit Spinner and a check to Tyranitar and Garchomp. But when Dugtrio got banned, Sun fell off in viability and Donphan completely lost its place, especially with Excadrill outclassing it as a spinner in every way. Similarly, Venusaur was a Sun staple with Chlorophyll doubling its speed when Sun is up, but the complex ban of Chlorophyll plus Drought basically trapped it in OU when it doesn't belong there. Espion and Vaporeon were both victims of the Baton Pass ban. Espion used to abuse Magic Bounce and Baton Pass to set up and pass boost safely, but without that strat, it's outclassed by the many other Psychic types. Vaporeon similarly could set up Acid Armor, Aqua Ring and Wish with Baton Pass, but without that, it's outclassed by the other Water types. Jolteon 2 had a niche over Thunderous Tea and Rotom Wash with Baton Pass, but it's also overshadowed these days. Gastrodon and Hydreigon are a bit misleading because they're actually solid Pokemon and even ranked higher than some of the OU Pokemon currently. They just have noticeable flaws. Hexorus was good for some time, but it's mostly outclassed by other dragons that were either faster or stronger, and once Kyurem Black dropped into the tier, Hexorus basically disappeared from viability. Metagross was never really meant to be OU, it's more of a noob trap that only stuck around because players insisted on using it and squeezing whatever value they could out of it, but all of its sets are outclassed by other Pokemon. And finally there's Toxicroak. It did have a real niche on rain teams, thanks to Triskin giving it longevity and helping it check opposing rain teams, but also pressure common rain answers like Tyranitar, Keldeo and Ferrothorn. The issue was that it was heavily rain reliant and is wall depending on its set. It's also easily outsped by top tier threats. And as sand teams became more dominant and thus ground and psychic types, Toxicroak just couldn't keep up. Moving on to Gen 4, there's quite a list of Pokemon that players really tried to make work in OU, but they never lived up to the hype. Dusknoir was one of the big disappointments. It's a strong wall, but it cannot even wall any Pokemon, and is outclassed by Rotom also in almost every way. On top of that, it's very vulnerable to Tyranitar, the king of Gen 4 OU. Electivire is a classic case of a Pokemon that was OU by reputation rather than results. It has great coverage and the potential to get out of hand with a speed boost thanks to its ability Motor Drive, but it rarely accomplished anything. Being a physical electric type is already enough to not be a great Pokemon, but it also suffered from 4 move slot syndrome, and without the speed boost or Motor Drive, it's too slow and frail. Mamoswine had a niche, but it struggled overall. Physical Ice Stab was weak, it was slow, and the metagame was hostile to ice types in general. Similarly, Weavile had those problems. It is fast, but it lacks strong dark and ice type moves, which means it fails to score key KOs while also being super frail. Ninjask also makes the list, though it's more remembered for its role in Baton Pass teams, which were banned like we mentioned earlier. Snorlax was another meme Pokemon that people just like to use, mostly with its curse set. I mean, it's classic for a reason. But the reality was, it should have dropped to UU. It's painfully slow, chipped down easily, and struggled against the many fighting types in the tier. Even after a curse boost, it still takes heavy damage from strong physical attackers running around. Finally, there's Togekiss, another meme troll Pokemon, however you want to call it. It's notorious for using Air Slash with Serene Grace to double the chance of a flinch, and also combining them with Nasty Plot for more power and Thunder Wave for even more hacks. But its normal typing held it back quite a bit, as well as its weakness to Stealth Rock and its mediocre speed. What OU by Technicality Pokemon surprised you the most, or didn't even know was there? Let me know in the comments down below. If you made it this far, like the video and subscribe. I upload weekly competitive Pokemon content like this, so if that's your thing, make sure to stick around. You can also support the channel even more if you would like to by becoming a member for just little as $1, and your name will be featured on the end screen. Thank you to the members. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.